Welcome back, Holy Readers. This is episode 38 of Holy Holy. So this week we're going to talk about the reading from September the 16th through the 22nd. We'll read Ezekiel 42 through 48 and finish that book. We'll read Daniel chapters 5 through 12 and finish that book. We'll read Psalm 130, 137, and 123. And then we'll read Revelation 22. Remember, we finished talking about it last week. We'll finish reading it this week. And then Luke chapters 1 through 6. And that's where we start the New Testament over again for the second time this year. All right. Ezekiel 42 through 48. These are visions of the new temple where Jerusalem is restored and it's a renewed land, and God's chariot mobile, the God mobile that we saw at the beginning of the book, it comes back and God dwells once again with his people. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the similarities between Ezekiel and Revelation. This time through, this is my 13th year reading this plan, the Old Testament once, the New Testament twice, and God is still speaking. That's why we're going to start Holy Holy again in January, and we're going to talk about things that we didn't talk about this past year, the same plan, and so I'm hoping that as we read these things, will continue to jump out at you. So here are some of the similarities. Ezekiel and John the Revelator, they're both in exile as they write. They both see a vision of God's glory. They both see four beasts, and the four beasts with the four faces, they all have the same faces. They both talk about the mark on the forehead of the people of God. Remember that in Revelation, God's people are marked on the forehead first, and then the beast does a counterfeit mark, which we call the mark of the beast. They both discuss the battles involving Gog and Magog. They both see a vision of the new temple and they measure it. And then they both see a river flowing from the temple of God that brings healing to the nations. So this is what I want you to get from that John the Revelator sees himself in Ezekiel and Ezekiel's story. And he believes that destruction is coming. And so he prophesies it similarly to Ezekiel and uses Ezekiel's terms, because he also believes that when destruction finally came, like Ezekiel said it would, that also restoration and renewal will come. So that when John prophesies that God is going to destroy, but he will build up again. And I want to tell you, read the Bible and see yourself in the story. If you're a woman that wants children, look at the story of Hannah and believe that God is going to provide and that he's going to use that child mightily in his kingdom. If you're facing giants like David, believe that God is going to give you the boldness and the strength to conquer the giants, and that he's going to raise you up to do mighty exploits. So whatever it is, see yourself in the story, but believe that God is going to be faithful to you as he was faithful to those characters in our Bible. Let's talk about Daniel. So the book of Daniel, we could talk about it all day long. Oh my goodness, there's so much here. But the book of Daniel, Daniel is exiled in that first wave of the Babylonian attacks. Remember, and he's deported to Babylon under King Nebuchadnezzar with his three friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Those are their Babylonian names, not their Jewish names. And the Nebuchadnezzar and Babylon, they're trying to assimilate Daniel. They're trying to make him Babylonian. So they want him to eat their food. Remember, in the first couple of chapters, he's trying to stay true to the kosher laws, and we see God honor that. So this book, the first 6 chapters are narrative stories. And then the second half is chapters 7 through 12. And these are apocalyptic visions. So let's break that down. The narrative stories, we've got where Daniel and his friends won't eat the king's rations, and God is faithful to Daniel. King Nebuchadnezzar has a troubling vision about the statue made of all different metals. Remember, and Daniel interprets. You've got the fiery furnace. You've got the handwriting on the wall. What a wild story. Think about it. You're having this party and this disembodied hand appears and writes on the wall. That's wild. Great story. And then you've got Daniel and the lion's den, all showing that God is faithful to his people despite them living in exile. Then you've got the apocalyptic visions in chapters 7 through 12. And so this is filled with great imagery, vivid imagery depicting future events. And there are a lot of theories about what those future events are. But we've got Daniel's vision of the beasts that represent successive empires. There are 4 beasts that correlate with 4 successive empires. And then the Son of Man comes and God establishes his eternal kingdom forever. You've got the vision of the ram and the goat representing the Medo-Persian and the Greek empires. You've got the prophecy of the 70 weeks. And then in 10 through 12, you've got further details about the conflicts that are going to come in the future, the conflicts of the nations, a period of great tribulation, and then God's final deliverance of his people. So the word tribulation should spark in you the ideas from Revelation, right? The great tribulation, which means that John the Revelator not only had Ezekiel on his mind when he wrote that book, but he also had Daniel. Daniel chapter 7 is one of the most significant chapters in the entire Old Testament. It's really difficult to overstate the importance of Daniel chapter 7. So Daniel sees a human-like figure called one like a son of man who comes in the clouds. And this figure is given dominion and glory and an everlasting kingdom by God and is referred to as the Ancient of Days. What makes this really significant is that Jesus describes himself in the Gospels as the Son of Man. What does that mean? Jesus is clearly saying, I am the one from Daniel chapter 7 who is called the Ancient of Days, who is given dominion and glory and an everlasting kingdom. Jesus is saying, I am the Messiah. I am the one that's promised. Man, that should make your mind go, like, that is crazy good stuff. So I want to move on, because I want to talk to you about the Psalms of Ascent. The Psalms of Ascent. Ascent means going up. And these are Psalms 120 through 134. And these would be sung by the Jewish people as they went to Passover, as they went to Pentecost and the Feast of Tabernacles. And Jerusalem is on a hill. Remember, the city on a hill. That's Jerusalem. It's literally on a hill. And so as they ascend up the mountain of God to the temple for these feasts, they would sing these songs, these psalms. It's called the Psalms of Ascent or the Songs of Ascent, either one. But they would sing these songs to make their heart ready for worship, to focus their heart and to focus their mind on worship. So these psalms have a variety of emotion. There's a great book called A Long Obedience in the Right Direction by Eugene Peterson, and he takes the Psalms of Ascent and he applies them to our lives. It's a great book, great read. But the emotions vary from distress in Psalm 120 to joy and celebration in Psalm 122, to a deep sense of dependence on God in Psalm 121, an expression of trust in God like Psalm 125. But at the heart of it is a strong emphasis on God's faithfulness. So let's talk about Luke again. I told you that we are starting the New Testament over, and instead of starting in Matthew, we start in Luke, just like we did in January. So the first 6 chapters of Luke, they provide a detailed picture of Jesus's life, his ministry, his early events surrounding his birth and his mission. So chapter 1 are birth announcements for Jesus and John the Baptist. Chapter 2 is Jesus's birth and his early life. So Jesus is presented as at the temple, and then we see the boy Jesus as well. Chapter 3 is the preparation of Jesus's ministry. And we see this especially in Jesus's baptism. Chapter 4 is the beginning of Jesus's ministry. Chapter 5 is the calling of the first disciples and Jesus's early miracles. And then chapter 6 is Jesus's teachings and the controversies that they cause. So I hope that you're enjoying this. We've got so many wonderful things ahead of us. Email me at jasmine@regenerationnashville.org. Find all of our videos at regenerationnashville.org/holyholy, as well as the reading plan. You can watch us on YouTube and Facebook. You can listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else that you listen to your podcast. I love you so much. I'm so excited. I'll see you next week. God bless.